Hello and welcome to Forever Blues, your podcast for all things Birmingham City. My name's Neil Moxley, this is Colin Tattum, and if we're wearing the same clothes, if you think that we've not changed after the Sheffield Wednesday dissection, you'd be about right. We haven't. Grateful thanks as always to Davidson's Law for sponsoring this podcast. We just had a quick break. We're back at it, and we're going to preview the game against Wrexham on Friday night. So, Col, over to you. What do you make of Phil Parkinson's side?
I think we know what we can expect from what we saw last season. They are very direct. They'll be aggressive. They put a lot of crosses into the box. I think they're amongst the league leaders for that, and league leaders for long balls. So it probably won't be pretty. So I think we all know what to expect, and it's interesting as well. Obviously, Wrexham came up with us. Well, they sort of just about hung on to our coattails, didn't they? Let's face it. And they are trying to address and consolidate in the Championship, and it's been a learning process for them. They're doing it inch by inch. It's not gone according to plan as they would have hoped so far. So there's a few similarities there with Blues as well. We are still finding our feet. And one of the big things I think we'll touch upon, their summer recruitment has been pretty spectacular in terms of the numbers.
Yeah, you've got a really good stat there.
Yeah, it's 33 million quid spent, the most spent by a Championship side that hasn't been relegated the previous season from the Premier League. So, we look at Blues and what they did and all the hoo-ha surrounding Blues, but Wrexham have really shelled out a lot of money. And they are below Blues in the league at the moment as it stands.
Yeah, it's a real statement of intent. I mean, obviously during the silly season that passes for the summer transfer window, you're making phone calls to agents, and the word that came back pretty quickly was they got a significant sum of cash. 25 to 30 million pounds was what I was hearing, and obviously that they were prepared to pay decent sort of wages for, and they mentioned this, ex-Premier League players who were possibly coming down, and they've been, and that's what's happened, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the likes of Connor Cody in there, Lewis O'Brien, Kiefer Moore, and then the big one, Nathan Broadhead from Ipswich, Ben Sheaf as well. So, like you said, they have spent and can remodel their squad, their team, and as I mentioned, they are finding their way. It's a step-by-step process. But in terms of how the game is likely to be, from a tactical standpoint, I think Blues will be expecting that sort of physical, aggressive bombardment that we saw last season.
Yeah, I mean, just nipping quickly to finish the recruitment thing, they are plug-and-play Championship players. They are players who you would expect to go in and be able to perform at our level, at a top six, top half minimum Championship sort of level, aren't they? Really interesting, I think. I mean, they've clearly set out the stall. There'll be obviously all the hullabaloo around the fact that obviously it's Tom Brady's Blues against the A-listers of the two Robs. I'm just wondering, really and truthfully speaking, whether all that goes out the window on a Friday night in autumn in North Wales.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I think it was more of a story last season, wasn't it? The first meeting, especially the one at St Andrews, and the star factor when Tom Brady brought his mate David Beckham to,
Do you reckon they'd met that often? Do you reckon they were on first name terms before?
They might be in a WhatsApp group, just the two of them. Yeah. For all I know, I don't know. So, but yeah, it's again, it's been chosen for live coverage for that very reason. But obviously, there's different pressures now surrounding both teams. They're both trying to right themselves a little bit in terms of Blues case after recent results, and I think Wrexham are 4 unbeaten now. So it'll be a fascinating game, and always one going into an international break as well with Blues sequence of results at the moment. It's one that they really need to get something from, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. But I mean, what I would say is that just to finish off the chat about Wrexham, are there parallels to be drawn with the fact that Phil Parkinson's made noises about trying to find his best side. And Chris Davies, do we think he's clearly trying to find his best side too? Do you think that stacks up?
Yeah, I think that's fair. They signed 13 players, we signed 12. 20 out at Wrexham. So again, you're assimilating new personnel. Also trying to maybe improve a little bit the style of play, and also to take into account what you're coming up against in the Championship. So there are similarities there. But you would hope, over the course of time, the passage of time, Blues' ambitions, will outstrip Wrexham's. But again, this is the here and now. Blues are in a tricky spot at the moment. So it is a big game in many respects, for both teams. But they all are in the Championship, and we are only 8 matches in.
Yeah.
So it's not, crisis time as you may see. People saying this, that, the other's wrong. Yes, we know there's things that we touched upon on the previous pod that have to improve, and I'm sure that management, players, and also ownership all know that, as all supporters do.
Yeah, it's talking about here and now, mate. Just switching it over to Blues. Where are we with injuries? Because we're 8 games in, and if you look at the injury list that we've got in front, and I'm looking down not because I don't want to pay attention to the camera, but because I can't remember them all because I'm of that age. But you've got the 2 obviously long-term issues with Scott Wright and Lee Buchanan. Ethan Laird, we learnt on Tuesday night after the game, is going to be out months with his hamstring injury, so you can forget him probably till the other side of Christmas, from what Chris Davies was saying. There's a potential foot problem with Bright Say Samuel. Stansfield's got an issue with his ankle. Marvin Dux has got a problem, we assume, still with his calf, although I think Chris Davies may have updated us on that one. It may be his knee, but it's still a problem. It's sufficient to have kept him out of the Coventry game. Then you've got Keshi Anderson, who we expected to be back but wasn't back on Tuesday night, and Willem Williamson. It's all looking a little bit fraught at the moment. Is that fair?
Yeah. When the injuries are stockpiling a little bit like this, it's not ideal. And I obviously bang on about the continuity aspect, getting a settled team. It's difficult, and in the front areas. And some of the players you mentioned there, they are key and integral to the side. And one I think who will be a really big miss is Ethan Laird, who's had a very, very good start to the season. And what he brings to the team, that's going to be missed. And obviously, Bright Say Samuel is close to suspension already on 4 yellows, and he picked up a little bit of a problem in the Sheffield Wednesday game, so that causes issues on that right hand side stroke right back spot, if you want to call it that. And then in the forward areas, there's nothing has been settled. Jay Stansfield again has had a little bit of an issue with his ankle, and I think it was his foot before. And I don't know, but I suspect he's playing through the sort of pain barrier right now.
Yeah,
he's putting himself out there, which it's not ideal if you are looking to get results and keep the same team and build something. So yeah, again, we'll talk about squad depth. Blues have got a decent squad depth, but if you're getting 6, 7, 8 players injured, you can have the deepest squad in the world.
Yeah.
And if you keep those 7, 8, 9 players, the key players, it's tough for anyone.
Yeah, I just want to. Don't think we touched on the previous pod. I just want to say what an excellent finish that was from Stansfield the other night. It was a mark of it was a high class finish, that was. It's a shame we can't put the ball in front of him a little bit more, because I think he'd really thrive. He's that was a mark of a quality player, and a player who's playing with a lot of confidence.
And that save by Horvath as well, I think probably didn't mention just after half time. That was right behind that. That was an excellent save, by the way.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about those moments, those margins. You go in, you go 2-0. You don't make an error collectively or individually to allow the opposition back in. It's the margins that aren't going Blues' way. So that's one of the reasons why they're in this current little bit of a rut.
Yes, we've established that Wrexham have got a physicality about them. One of the accusations that's been levelled against this Blue side, that they haven't so much. With that in mind, A, do you think that's fair? And B, how do you think that'll affect Chris Davies' team selection going into Friday?
Yeah, I don't know. I just wonder whether he will, bearing in mind with the issues with Laird and Bright Say Samuel, I just wonder if he might consider Phil Neumann at right back,
Okay.
And then doing similar what happened last season when Christian Bielik went to right back, allowing the left back to get up the field. So when we're in possession,
Yes,
we
swinging it over.
we swing into a back three. So Neumann would be fine on the right hand side of that. For sake of argument, if Jack Robinson comes back or it's Cashin,
Yeah.
you've got a natural left footer on the left side and you've got Clara in the middle. I just wonder if he'll do that because, like you mentioned, the threat, the aerial threat, the physical power that Wrexham do have. I wonder if he'll do that and bring a little bit more oomph and sturdiness into the side for this particular game.
Yeah, I wonder if he might change the formation. I mean, you know where I'm going to go with this.
I
because
can't guess.
Yeah, you can guess. You're going to guess, aren't you? But I just wonder whether he might bring Tommy Dawn into the equation and I
As one of the two, or as a 10 further forward, or what?
Well, I don't know. He did say at the start of the season in an interview that while his preferred formation was 4-2-3-1, I still don't think we've got a natural 10 in there. I still don't think there's what. I mean, Marvin Ducks, whatever. Well, to be honest with you, it's actually pointless talking about him because he's now his old Brian Clough thing. I don't want to see you because if you're no good to me, just get out of my sight type of thing. It's one of those ones. It's pointless talking about whether or not he's a 10 really because he isn't fit. And I just wonder whether or not, given the fact that they will stick it on Blues, whether we need to be really competitive in the centre of midfield and play a tight 3 in there rather than a 10 and play, have two, flyers down either side. You could play Gray and Kumas, I suppose, for an hour, and if Stansfield fit, put him up there. If not, it'd have to be Lyndon Dykes. I don't really see the Dykes Kyogo axis working, if I'm being brutally honest. I just don't see that at the moment. I don't see either of them as a natural 10. And I think it's more important to win the midfield battle and try and establish some degree of control in there than it is to pose that threat. I mean, obviously it's subject to change and it's only my opinion, but I think Doyle did enough going forward to warrant another crack.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about Wrexham strengths and how we combat that. Let's look at from the flip side, a positive way, that how can Blues affect the game in terms of trying to win it and trying to score goals. And another thing I just picked up about Wrexham, I mean, they face more shots than any other side in the Championship.
Right.
So that tells you something. They are get-atable, if you want.
Well, it flags it up very much so, doesn't it? That's
so yes, you can, put the onus, put them onto the back foot.
Yeah.
So that's one way with it, and obviously with the wide players that Blues have got, we can be a little bit direct with the ball carriers, but all depends on Chris Davies' selection, which is going to be very interesting for the reasons we just talked about there.
Yeah, we're coming into the sort of like second natural break in the season. Where are we? I mean, do we? Can we sort of like take a step back at the end of this and sort of say he still doesn't know his best team? We're still finding out about players. We can't make a value judgment until we've got everybody fit. I mean, is it a bit of all that and everything?
Exactly. I think there's elements of all that, and also doesn't look like any one or two teams are going to run away with this league like in previous years. I think it's going to be quite a tight division for a long while. And I always say this about the Championship, it's a league of runs. You can have a real bad spell, you can not win for 4, 5, 6 games, but then all of a sudden you can win 3 on the spin and you're catapulted right back into the mix.
Yeah.
So I always think over a 46 game season, you have to hold your nerve a little bit. You have to, if you've got a belief in who's in charge, who your team are, the players, you have to hold your nerve a little bit. Because it's never linear at this league, and I think it will be almost tougher in so much there's a lot of parity in it this season. Whereas previous, last year Leeds, Burnley, and Sheffield just sort of pushed themselves away from the pack quite, in big spectacular fashion in many respects. Not so sure that will be the case, but to go back to, the original point you made. I mean, we're eight games in, coming to the 9th game, so. It might sound boring, but we are still trying to gain a proper foothold and find a consistent, way that works for us at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, To a certain degree, because the overriding ethos last year was that teams came and sat in a low block, we knew what we were going to get. Conversely, the teams that came and had a go sometimes got a bit of joy against Blues, didn't they? But generally speaking, you didn't have to tinker with it too much. You know, if you've got something that's working against it, just crack on. And that's effectively what happened with the 111 points. You know, they established a rhythm of playing, established a rhythm of winning. But you'd be mental to change it, wouldn't you? But I don't think we've got either at the moment. There's not that continuity. There's not that consistency of results or performance or selection. And I think we're all, you know, until that settles down, I think we're going to be what we are at the moment. We're not going to really know. You know, we might lose a 3-0. We might lose 3-0 to Coventry. We might do scrape a draw against Sheffield Wednesday, and who knows what might happen. You know, if they can, you know, eradicate the mistakes that have been a hallmark of the previous two games defensively. You know, I'll repeat what I said. We've not been difficult. We haven't had to make teams work hard to score against us. And you need to in the Championship. It's the bedrock of everything. If you've got a solid and consistent defence, you can go and nick games. We saw it, and we've seen it under previous managers, to be fair. Gary Rowett's whole ethos was built on being conservative. You know, he played a 4-2-3-1 as well, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And, you know, we effectively prospered with, I would suggest, lesser players than we've got now. But he did have, I think, at that time, you know, a consistency of selection, a consistency of performance, and I don't think, to be fair to Chris Davies, he's had that.
No, I think you're right, and it is also you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, do you? You can't just go away from a style of play that you've implemented just because. No, you have to you have to adjust and tweak it, and sometimes it might just take one result. It might just take a 0-0, a 0-1. It just might take that. Although obviously we've got an international break coming up, but it sometimes can be from the most unusual of sources where you can sort of turn things around. And also it's that cliche, isn't it? You just got to be good in both boxes.
Yeah,
you really have. And at the moment, that's an issue for Blues.
Yeah,
and as we've talked about away from home midfield, and they're probably like getting a little bit stretched, overpowered in the central areas. So yeah, there's issues that we're talking about, all the supporters are talking about, and it's not as if it's going to be something that the management group, Chris Davies and his staff, that they're not aware of.
No, I think it's. I have to say, I think it's been I wouldn't say chastening opening, but I think it's been. I do think it's been
sobering. It's probably,
reality check.
Yeah, I do reality think it's bitten a little bit, which is it's no bad thing, is it?
No.
I know it was all tongue in cheek where HMS stormed the league and all that. Blues fans were playing up to it a lot, which we did last season. But no, I don't think anybody expected us to be like running away, at the top. I mean, Ipswich probably caught people by surprise last season when they were the season before last. Sorry, I think they won 10 out of the first 12 games, didn't they?
Yeah.
They weren't. So they came up almost on the rails, if that makes sense. Whereas Blues were a known quantity, and obviously there's a high profile nature about the club now for various reasons. So yeah, it wasn't going to be necessarily plain sailing. And again, we're back to this level which we found ourselves in 2 years ago. And all the previous seasons prior to that, we've been pretty wretched in the Championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to point out as well, that Chris Davies this is his, only second season in frontline management. Mm. Do I think he's a good coach? Yes. Do I think he fronts up pretty well? Yes. I know, like everybody has been moaning blind on socials about this, that, and the other, and I have taken issue in the previous pod with him over, taking off, Doyle early, because I still think you can play players for 75 minutes instead of 60. I just don't get it. I just don't see why they wouldn't be fit enough to play 75 minutes. He's 23, 24 for heaven's sake. He should be at the peak of his physical fitness. Get on with it. However, you can't discount what he did last year. And I quite enjoyed him sprinting down. I know people, his peers are probably looking at him and thinking something different, but I quite enjoyed it. It's he shows that he cares a great deal, and sometimes You know, you can't. He doesn't always look like that in front of the media, but I genuinely think he cares a great deal about this.
Yeah, it wasn't iRobot, was it? Like
No.
you said, it was a human natural reaction to that moment in time. And it was, fair play. You know, like you said, he does care. No, a thing that interests me as well when we've talked about continuity and the toughness of the championship, and obviously Blues issues that we've had in previous years. The last time a manager started and finished 2 successive seasons was when Lee Clark was in charge.
Yeah.
So that's how long ago it was. And I always think it is important. We touched upon Coventry City before about, yes, okay, Frank Lampard's come in, but there was a basis there. There was the team's been together at the championship level. They all know what they're doing. Blues are trying to catch up, almost having spent that season in League One. So again, you know,
I mean, I draw the parallel really with Lampard, and also bringing, you know, what's happened at West Brom with Ryan Mason, another rookie manager, for want of a better phrase, who's gone in. But West Brom have got an established way of playing. I saw them play against Derby. They pretty much have adopted Carlos Corberan's way of playing. They don't create many chances, but by heaven, are they difficult to score against, because they dominate the ball and they've got a set way of playing. They've got some strength in there. They've got some power in there. And to be honest with you, not a lot has changed. I didn't see a lot change from that team that I saw under Carlos Corberan to what Ryan Mason's doing. And I don't see a lot, actually, really, that's different. Well, it's not a lot different, because the same players, Frank Lampard, barring one or two, turning out for Lampard as we're turning out for Mark Robbins. So, you know, you're right. There is an established method there. There is an established way of playing. There is, his consistency in personnel. And at the moment, and these injuries aren't helping, are they? You know, because he's, you know, even if he did fancy selecting the same team, he's not being afforded that chance because of the injury situation.
Interesting thing as well that came out of the Sheffield Wednesday game. A lot of people decided to read the body language of Tom Wagner at the end. Obviously, he was fairly stern-faced, because obviously his team didn't beat a team that was second from bottom. How do you assess all that? Or do we all read too much into things like that, where Jeremy Dale, to his right, he's having a chat with another director, and he's normal, he's got a bit of a smile on his face. So that's not to say he's happy that we drew. So do we read too much into stuff like this when results aren't going the way that we'd all want?
Yeah, I mean, he's a club owner who's just seen his team scrape a draw against the second bottom team in the league, you know, in the 99th minute. So on the face of it, you know, were any Blues fans particularly happy with that? With that? If somebody said we're going to scrape a draw at the start, you're like, really? But the way they panned out, we were all absolutely, you know, we were grateful for it at the end of the final whistle. I mean, look, they don't take losing particularly well. We saw them streaming for the exit in the Ryder Cup, didn't we, at the weekend after the golfers. You know, the games are still being played. They've lost. They're off home, aren't they? They're towards the, you know, all heading off towards the trains, taking back to NYC. So, look, do I expect Tom Wagner to be over the moon? Perhaps not. Would I read too much into it? No. And I'd just ask them to be very mindful of what they did the last time they made a knee-jerk reaction. It caused all sorts of problems. So I think that, you know, they've got to be a bit careful.
Yeah, and I think the Tom Wagner, Tom Brady, the owners made a great store in being meticulous about the appointment of Chris Davies, and obviously he wowed them, and they went through hundreds of candidates, and so he came a little bit out of left field. Let's face it, everyone was quite surprised, and credit to them for identifying a young managerial talent to implement how they want the team to play and the club to be. So, you know, you don't suddenly go back on that and change and rip it up, do you?
Well, I don't think it'd be very fair on Chris Davies, actually.
No, like you said, he's had eight games as a championship manager.
Yeah.
I don't mean on his laptop, but you know, so you won't know. You know, like I say, you got to let people breathe. He will make mistakes. He is learning, but in the way he's conducted himself so far, you know, there are encouraging signs.
Yeah.
But like I said, but we all.
I mean, was it Chris Davies' fault that Ian Cashin, you know, made a blunder at that allowed Jamal Lowe to score the opening goal? Was it his fault that, you know, the three? I still think there were preventable goals at Coventry City. You know, you might say, well, it's his selection, his tactics. Yeah, I get that. Who's actually ultimately picking the players? I think we need to drill down. We're going to have to drill down at some stage and find out a little the answers to those questions. But to damn him at the moment, it just seems to me to be
if we all get into
massive overreaction.
If we all get into a situation whereby we're questioning this, that, the other every 8 games, then you get nowhere.
No,
you've got to have a courage of your convictions, and also, yes, you know, away from home it's not been good, but at home it's 29 games unbeaten still. Let's not forget, and it wasn't ideal Sheffield Wednesday, but it was ideal the way it ended in those period from the 85th minute into the 102nd or whatever it was. The Blues were absolutely desperate to make sure that they'd salvage something, which they did, and there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the desire, the spirit, you know, are still there, as you would expect. I think that pretty much concludes our look at we've gone off, we've deviated there, haven't we? We've gone off Wrexham a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah, we can go back onto Wrexham if you want.
No, we're all right, I think. I think we've had enough of Wrexham. Anyway, listen, thanks for being with us. As always, my grateful thanks to Colin for joining me this morning, and our grateful thanks to Davison's Law and our other sponsors, Drain Tech, AMG Logistics and Bewdley Spirits. This has been Forever Blues, the podcast. We've also got our website, and we're all available on all the usual YouTube platforms as well. So please like, follow and subscribe. It does help us, and hopefully we can keep bringing you some quality content.